Hello creeps! Andy here, and today I am going to just read off all of the books that I read in 2021. We're just gonna... Oh my god, am I in my 30s and can't snap? Not very well. Whatever. So I'm going to hold up every book that I read, give a very short synopsis of each one. Most of them are horror, but there are definitely other things in here. And some of these you will have seen if you watched my best horror books of 2021, both of those videos. But other than that, let's just kind of get into it. I'm not going by any specific order. I'm just going to grab a stack and let's get to it. All right, so here we have Ray Bradbury's One More for the Road. This one was just a book of short stories. It had a skeleton on it, so I thought it was going to be more creepier stories, but it wasn't. But fantastic. Ray Bradbury's just an absolutely wonderful writer. Next thing, Kurt Vonnegut, Look at the Birdies. Again, this is a book of short stories by Kurt Vonnegut, and he is just one of my favorite writers of all time, and it was interesting to read his work in short story form. Next up, Peter Straub, Ghost Story. I read this because this was, Stephen King had said in an interview, this was his favorite horror book and the scariest book he's ever read, and so I read it thinking that maybe that was true, and it just honestly wasn't a book for me. It was just about this like entity terrorizing these people. Not my favorite book, but you know, it just wasn't a book for me. The next one that I read was The Couple Next Door. This is by Sherry Lapina, and this is about a couple who goes to a dinner party, leaves their baby at their house next door alone, and the baby goes missing, and they try to figure out who did it. This one is called The Shadows by Alex North. Oh, man, I don't even really remember the like synopsis of this. So it's about an older man who remembers doing something as a kid, like seeing this shadow figure in the woods. I don't have a clear concept of the plot because there's more that goes into it. He's older and then it goes back to when he's younger and they're trying to figure out what happened. But it is a really great novel and I do remember really enjoying it at the time. Sorry, not a big help. For Rye, I just read recently. This is by Gavin Gardner, and this is about a woman named Renata who goes back to her hometown to try to figure out who viciously murdered her mother. This one is The Nightcrawler. This was about kind of like a post-apocalyptic world where people are trying to survive these big monsters that are trying to kill them. The Party, this is by Robin Harding. This was about a party where things go wrong and a young girl gets hurt, and the family gets sued by her parents and divorce and bratty teens, and it's just kind of like a drama. This is called The Santa Claus Murders. This is about Santa Claus who murder people. This is by Mavis Doriel Hay, and it's about someone who dresses in a Santa suit and commits murder, and they try to figure out who did it. It's like a whodunit, but there's only one kill, and it's just honestly like 200 pages of really bad detective work. This one is Secret Santa by Andrew Schaefer. This was really fun. It was about a woman who starts at a new company, gets a Secret Santa gift from somebody who turns out to be this doll who's supposed to ward off evil, but she doesn't know if it's actually causing evil or trying to help her. It's a fun story. R.L. Stein's Silent Night. This is, of course, a YA novel about a girl who works at a store. She's kind of a brat, and she starts getting these weird gifts sent to her, and then the store gets robbed, someone gets murdered, and they try to figure out who is at the base of it. This was Guy's Passage, another one that I read recently. This is about a group of people, backpackers, that travel into land that they're not supposed to, and this force comes after them. Next up, we have Hannibal. This is by Thomas Harris, and I thought it was going to be similar to the book because that's how the previous two, Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, were. This is so different from the book. Very different. That's all I have to say about that one. Death Proof by Quentin Tarantino. This is about a guy who has a car that's death proof, and he honestly just goes around murdering young women. I enjoy reading scripts and stuff. This is Dreamcatcher. This is by Stephen King, and this is a book about these like alien life forms that come and land on Earth, and this group of friends has to try and stop it before these alien beings take over the world. Next we have Kurt Vonnegut's Timequake. How do I even describe this book? I don't even know. It's a book about a timequake where time starts receding and going backwards, and then at some point it's like, oh, just kidding, let's go forward again. And so for that decade of time, people have to do everything that they did. So no matter what their actions were, if their actions hurt someone or caused something horrendous, they still have to do it. They have like no free will essentially. And then free will kicks in again. And but it's not really about that. It's like, that's the plot of the story, but he kind of circles around it. I honestly can't even describe Kurt Vonnegut's work except for go read it. Next up here, Zombie Raccoons and Killer Bunnies. I did a book about the strangest horror books I ever read, and this is just about zombie raccoons and killer bunnies. That's exactly what it's about. It's about like killer animals that attack people. Next up we have Robert Bloch's Lori. This was about, what was this about? This was about a girl whose parents got killed and she was trying to figure out who did it, and it's somehow related to a past life of this woman. The Ruins by Scott Smith. I've talked about this book so many times. This book is fantastic. It's amazing. It's great. It's about people who get caught on ruins when they go to Mexico and they can't, the people there won't let them leave. This is Reviver. I've also talked about this book probably 1,000 times. This is about a group of people called Revivers who revive people who have been murdered and tape it so it can be used in their trials to get a guilty verdict for the people who have murdered them. These I just talked about. The Sandman by Lars Kepler. Here Are the Monsters by Amalinda Berube, and Diary of a Stalker by Electra Parks. These I just talked about in my dollar store video, so I'm not going to go into detail because if you guys watch that one, then you will have seen that. Next up, I read The Mist by Stephen King. Well, it's about this mist that comes in and monsters are in it. People are trying to survive. It's also a lot more than just people versus monsters. It's a lot of people versus people too. It's a great little book. Next up we have Proof by David Auburn. This is a play and it's about a man who slowly loses his mind and his daughter is the one taking care of him, and then they find this proof in the house that they think he has written, but really she's written it. I don't know what a proof is. It's something with math, like a really super long math equation. I absolutely love that play. Yeah, I think it's a movie too. Next up we have Paul Tremblay's The Cabin at the End of the World. I've talked about this one a lot too. It's about a family that goes into the woods. People follow them and say that they must sacrifice one of them or the world will end. Clive Barker's Cabal. This is about a man who is told that he's like a serial killer. He has no recollection of it. So he goes to join this group of people called the Nightbreed because he doesn't think he belongs on Earth. And this is The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. That one is about a girl, you guessed it, on a train. And she watches these people at a stop. The girl goes missing and she kind of inserts herself a little too aggressively into the missing persons case. What else have we got here? Oh, these I think are all the ones that I've talked about recently. So Sophocles, Antigone, a girl that goes against the king to bury her brother who's a traitor and all hell breaks loose. Robert Bloch, Monsters in Our Midst. This is just honestly a book of short stories about the narrators, like the main person in the story being the antagonist. Oh my gosh, this book is so fantastic. Highly recommend. American Psycho. I don't think I need to really give a description of that. Bret Easton Ellis, but another fantastic one. And then I've talked about zombies so many times too. Joyce Carol Oates. It's like reading a journal of a serial killer. And Books of Blood by Clive Barker. Again, another book of short stories. Anything by Clive Barker is fantastic. And there's more. One second. Oh, there's a lot more. This one is How to Defend Yourself Against Alien Abduction by Anne Druffel. I bought this because I thought that it was going to be written as a joke, but it's honestly like a definitive guide. If you are being abducted by aliens, please refer to this book. Next up, we have Neil deGrasse Tyson's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. I read this, really entertaining, also went right over my head because I'm a big dum-dum. The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Oh my gosh, you guys, this book. Oh my gosh, this book. Let me read you the first sentence of this book, okay? So I read this because I was going to do a Turn of the Screw versus, wasn't Hill House, it was the other one, the Netflix show. It's based off of the Turn of the Screw. And so I read it to do a comparison, and then I just never did. But let me read you the first sentence. This is the first sentence of this story. The story had held us round the fire, sufficiently breathless, but except for the obvious remark that it was gruesome, as on Christmas Eve, in an old house, a strange tale should especially be, I remember no comment uttered till somebody happened to note it as the only case he had met in which such a visitation had fallen upon a child. No, I can't. This is The Widow by Fiona Barton. This is about a widow who they believe that her husband had abducted a girl before he he died in a tragic accident, and she is being questioned and they're trying to get more answers out of her. It's actually a really interesting story. It's not really thriller or horror. It's kind of, I honestly don't even know what genre it would be, but I really liked it. This one is Bones by Joan Burke. I really like this one too. It kind of had like a Silence of the Lambs feel. It's about a serial killer that convinces police to let him out so he can bring them to the remains of these people, but he's like set up booby traps over the whole place and ends up escaping. It's actually a really interesting story, and honestly I've been thinking about this one a lot lately, so I think I'm gonna reread it eventually because it's one of those books that I can't get off my mind. Next, I just read Poems by Emily Dickinson. They are poems. Next is Ralph Waldo Emerson. This isn't actually the book that I read, but I don't know where my other Emerson book is, but I just read Self-Reliance from him. It's just like a little essay. Yeah, that's what they call it. The Last Days of Jack Sparks. This was a really interesting one. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember what this one was about either. It was about, it's so interesting, the timelines on this crossover, and it's about a guy, I think he's a writer. Yeah, he's a writer, and he witnesses an exorcism, and creepy things happen with that, and then he ends up going to join this group of people who think they can create a ghost. And so he goes to write on that, and then somehow they link together. It's an interesting story, but the part where they create the ghost just wasn't creepy for me, but the exorcist part was really creepy. So like half of the book I loved, and then half of the book I was like, okay. Red Dragon, Thomas Harris. It's about a guy who tries to catch a serial killer. I'm sure you guys know the story of that. Shadow Man by Dennis Etchison. This is about this like force or entity or perhaps being who is abducting children and murdering them. And Dean Koontz' Mr. Murder. This is about a guy who tries to get his life back from a writer who supposedly stole his face. They look the same, and he thinks that he stole his life. But he's also an assassin. Okay, so those are the books that I have listed. Now, I have also... Oh no. Oh, it's a disaster. Okay, I also have a few books. Fountain Society by Wes Craven. I think my friend has this one. This is about a guy who gets kidnapped by a specific segment of the government, and his girlfriend, they fake his death. His girlfriend doesn't believe he's dead, so she goes to find him. Every time we meet at the Dairy Queen, your whole fucking face explodes. This is by Carlton Melton III, and this is another book that I read for the silliest horror books or whatever. This book was cute. It was a cute story about like a young couple that get nervous. It was like I feel like a metaphor for butterflies. And Spermjackers from Hell, Christy Morgan. This one again I read because I thought it was going to be like a funny, silly joke book, and like it kind of is, but it's actually a good story. Like I really enjoyed this one, and it was about these people who just summon this demon from hell, and she's like a succubus. The next one were The Undertaker and Other Macabre Tales. This is by Derek Hutchins, and this was like an anthology type book where the beginning you hear that this man sits by graves and can hear the stories of the dead, and then the stories that you read are the stories from the dead. It's a really cool concept. The Hand That Pulls You Under, this is by James Flynn. This again was another book of short stories. And then I had The Ragged by Brett Shoemaker, which is a book about a married couple. His grandfather just died, so he goes back to the house to kind of get things in order after his passing, and he finds out that there is something sinister going on. So all of the books really were fun that I read. Most of them I really enjoyed. There were only a few that weren't my favorite books, but those are all the books that I read. I think I read something about like 55 of them. Yeah, I'm not a crazy reader. I can't read very fast or anything. I read about 50 pages a day, but even still, a book a week I don't think is terrible. And it just goes to show that if you read a little bit each day, it really does add up. So yeah, those are the books that I read. Let me know what books you read this year, and I will see you next time with another horror video. Bye guys.